morning, thank you very much. That was quite fun. I was just thinking this morning, I attended my first ACB at the time conference in 2006 in Namibia.
Wow.
Is there anybody here who attended that same conference? I know there's a few hands. Yeah. Guys, we're getting old. But age is one thing, but to stay relevant, that's what it's about. So it doesn't matter how old you are and how long you've been in this game. We have to reinvent ourselves constantly to make sure that we stay relevant and bring the good news to the masses. Isn't this what this conference is about? To shine the light. Now, I've got so much data here. So this morning, I deleted a few slides because I just said to Carl as well, if there's anybody who loves data, that's what we do. You're more than welcome to contact me and I can send you a lot of details. And I think it's crucial to understand where media in South Africa is migrating to. Otherwise, we will never be able to do proper planning and programming. But so my journey started in Christian media in 2005, when I had this massive encounter with the Lord, when I supernaturally felt that He called me to do media. And in 2005, I joined Radio Tigerberg. I sold all my businesses, and for the first time in my life, I had to work for a salary. That was quite daunting at the time. But the vision for me was always the one thing that gets me up in the morning, to understand what we have in our hands. So this morning, we're going to dwell a little bit on the past, not too much. Jonathan did a good job last night to explain to us the journey of Christian media after the past 30 years, and it's quite astounding. So we're going to talk about the future and the present, but the one thing that I like reading 20 years ago, was a saying by Carl Jung. He's not a Christian. I think we know him as the psychologist. In the late 1900s, media was just getting traction. So print media was the #1 medium. The radio just started. And everybody at the time was consuming this medium. And he had the following to say. He said, mass media is the most powerful tool used by the ruling class to manipulate the masses. It shapes and molds opinions and attitudes and defines what is normal and acceptable. And isn't this what we experience today? The world we are living in now is defined by media. And unfortunately, it's not Christian media. We think the Bible determines what is normal and acceptable to people, and it's not. For me, it's a non-negotiable. The Bible will always remain the only compass that we will use when it comes to everything in life. And how do you get that message across? How do you stay relevant? So the reason why this is so important to me is we need to understand how to communicate this message to people so that they take us seriously. And I think you will agree that if we think we can do media today, the way we did it 30 years ago, we might as well just close down. Yeah. We can't do media the same. So we have to innovate. We have to grow. We have to reset constantly. And if we don't do that, we will never move the needle. And then you will find that what is normal and acceptable is 100% not what the Bible teaches us. That's why we have the societies that we're living in, globally, not just here. I was reading in Romans 10 this morning again, how then will they call on Him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in Him of whom they have never heard? So we're going to spend some time today to look at our landscape, to see what we've achieved so far, but also to better understand where we need to take media in the future. Because like I said already, we can't do the same. Then there won't be another 30 years, to be quite honest. We have to innovate. We don't have a choice. All right. Oh yeah, this is just a short video Last year we had the privilege of also celebrating Radio Tiger was 30 years. Some of you were there. And all glory to God, because what happened this past few years was astounding, and we give Him all the glory. And out of this was a journey that we've learned so much. And I invite anybody to come and sit with us if we can share any knowledge, anything, from whatever your need might be. You're all more than welcome. And we will gladly share whatever we've got. Well, thank you. So that's the kind of the story. And the more we talk about media, and I'm going to show you a few slides now. Let's be honest, we're always a bit biased towards radio, aren't we? And I'm going to show you today that radio is still the most relevant media in the world. And we can get emotional about it because a lot of people think radio is dead, but it's not. And we can have a little bit of talk about that. But let's look at the present. I just want to show you what the media landscape looks like at the moment. That will give you a better understanding. So this is according to PRC. So print magazines, as you can see, is way to the right. They are in trouble, and we all know that. And then as you go on, you will see over here, this is satellite TV, this is multi-choice. Then we've got free-to-air, the ETV's SABC, social media, very strong as you can imagine. Social messaging, this is the WhatsApps, like all of us do. Who of you is not in a WhatsApp group? So, just mute the thing. And then, number one is radio. And since COVID, it is amazing to see how time spent listening on radio has increased tremendously. So just a few stats. 5 hours, guys, 5 hours, 12 minutes per day. So Africans spend on radio. That's a lot of airtime. Every single day. So can you imagine if you can catch those ears with the message that we so strongly believe in? Are we going to move the needle or not? Absolutely. So 71% of them are middle and upper class. The dual medium consumption is getting more and more relevant. And we're going to have a little bit of a talk about that now. Because in terms of the future, don't think for 1 second we just can do radio because radio is popular. 5 hours of radio. That's not what it's about. The people that have the ears at the moment are the people who are extremely innovative of how they integrate media. Social media, digital, everything that is available, they use that very creatively to boost audiences. 32 million reach on a daily basis. That's massive. There's no medium in the country that can say this. So we are sitting with a powerful medium. We just need to do better with it. For those of you who don't know this graph, it's actually just to show you how a day looks like in the life of radio. So again, if you want to build an audience on any station, on any platform, your morning drive is the most important show ever. Don't think for 1 second you're going to build an audience if you don't have a proper morning drive show. That is the most important show. And then it falls off, it drops off, simply because people are busy, and the old notion that people will get in the car on the way back home, that has vanished, because the way we work changed. And also, let's be honest, they consume different forms of media. Streaming has become a reality now, and the way they consume music also changed. But this is just an interesting graph to show you what that looks like. The digital landscape, this was quite fascinating. The digital landscape has changed radically. And just a few things to point out. So more than 43 million people currently has access to the internet. That means people have access to knowledge, to data, to entertainment. So again, to think we can only do radio and the ears will follow is just simply wrong. This is also another thing to look at, and I spoke to Carl just earlier. This is what we need to look at. 99% of people in this country owns a smartphone. And they're on that phone every single day, hours on end. So what are we doing on that, in that space? So if you can't combine your strategy with a smart device, then you're also dead in the water. And I'm not saying you have to have streaming or have an app. That is just simply easy. There's a strategy that you need to formulate of how to engage with that specific audience, because they consume content differently. Another few interesting stats. 29% of internet users, 29% of that 43 million are listening to online radio. And I think every single radio station that I know, they have a online presence. But I think we are not really geared to deal with that specific audience. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Look at this, 9 hours, almost 10 hours daily spent on the internet. Now keep in mind that that is everything. It's not just Googling, it is consuming media, watching Netflix, everything to do with the internet, 10 hours a day. Here's an interesting one. 2 hours a day people spend on streaming devices listening to music. Now, there's also a lot to be said for that, because why don't they tune into a radio station to listen to that? There's good data on that as well. Then the growth of podcasts is one of the new emerging factors after COVID, of how people consume, again, content. And that hasn't changed back to the old ways of consuming media. So we have to be in this space as well. And again, when it comes to podcasts, there's a very specific science of how that works and what is popular and what not. Again, we have a lot of data on this. And then 1.5 million people have smart devices, smart homes. So everything is digital in your home. And which means everything becomes digital. So the point is, that is present. This is not future. This is what's currently happening in our country. And if we don't play in that space, we're going to lose our audience. Because if you've got a radio station, and I said to my team how many times, yes, we've got a 30 years legacy, and we've got loyal listeners, but we will lose them if we can't offer them everything. Because all the other competitions, the secular stations, they offer everything on every single device, whether it's news or weather or traffic reports or whatever is relevant to them, they will find it. And if we don't give it to them, we're going to lose that listener. So this is the present reality. Then we talk about media now, not just radio. So that was a radio snapshot, the digital snapshot. This is print. And this is the sad reality. We all grew up with newspapers in our homes. And I think now we're at the end of that cycle. What Carl Jung wrote about almost 100 years ago about the print media doesn't exist anymore. So, as you can see here, Sunday Times down 88%, Daily Sun 98%. So the point is, soon you will never find a printed newspaper anymore, because we will not be able to turn that cycle around. So from a business perspective, this is a nightmare. So again, they have to change their approach. And if, luckily, most of them done this many years ago already, but you have to migrate your audience to the digital space, especially if you're in print. Then let's talk about the Christians. And I want to just check my watch. The reality is we've got a massive advantage. We've got an audience that are dedicated, passionate, and but like I said here, they navigate significant challenges, and to remain competitive for us with secular platforms will become more and more our challenge as Christian media planners, owners, because the reality is people want to be entertained. We have to emphasize high quality, engaging and relevant content while leveraging technology and innovative distribution methods with a crucial focus on sustained impact and growth. I just want to give you a number here. We live in a fantastic country. I love this country. I believe you love this country. There's not a country in the world that can tell the story of South Africa. This diverse rainbow nation, of which 85% people say that they are Christians. There's about 54 million people listening to radio on a daily basis. Of that, 43% are Christians, 43 million. So we have 43 million Christians in this country who are listening to radio. I want us to get that number. 43 million Christians that are listening to radio. How many of them are listening to Christian radio? Anybody guess? Not even 3%. Right. That is the reality that we face. And I'm talking to myself here. I'm talking to our teams, and we talk about this a lot. So why is that? Why is it that Christians don't tune in to Christian radio? I want to ask a question. Do you think it's possible to change programming in such a way that we don't compromise the message? Do you think that's possible? Yes. Absolutely. The one thing that we will never do, because that's the first thing I hear, if we talk about let's change programming, let's change content, we have to change, we have to adapt, we have to resonate with an audience, we have to be relevant. Then I hear people tell me, yeah, but we're going to compromise the message. No, we don't compromise the message, we compromise the method. There's a very big difference. And I want to stress again, if we are serious about our calling and our mission, we will have to change. And I know change is difficult. People hate change. If I talk about people, I'm not talking about listeners, I'm talking about us. Because we are so used to do things the way we did it the past 30 years. And to change that now is difficult, it's painful. Not everybody is happy about it. But if we don't do it, we will never be able to engage with 43 million people. Do you think these 43 million people need Christian radio? Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely they do. But now they're tuning into the East Coast radios and the Highvelds and the Jacarandas and the KFMs in Cape Town. And why is that? Because the commercial stations has also become clever. They know how to resonate and engage with an audience in such a way that they don't offend. But now all of a sudden the Christians find that very appealing. Because they get what they're looking for. They are entertained, they get the information they want. So they tune in. So unfortunately we don't have time today to talk about programming. We've got specialists with us at BDM, that's what they focus on. And we take messaging from certain clients because we've got big clients in our business. And we take them across all platforms, commercial, digital, we haven't worked with, there's not a commercial or SABC station we haven't worked with this past 4 or 5 years. And we've proved time and again, with the right messaging, you can engage with people. So we need to sit and decide that change is needed. Guys, 3% is not good enough. It's not good enough. God has put some very powerful tools in our hands. And we need to be clever, more clever, of how to use this powerful medium that can shape and mold opinions, defines what is normal and acceptable, We have to get better at this. But again, it will take effort. I just said to Carl outside, there was a time, let's be honest, where Christian media was very competitive with one another. And we were focusing so much on our so-called competition and opposition that we lost 40 million people in the process. Was that worth it? Absolutely not. The reality is the audiences are big enough. That's why even in our business we had so many calls from people saying that we have to change our program into other languages, African languages, English, etc. And we just said, listen, we are called for the Afrikaans community. I know it's not the biggest language in the country, but let's do that properly. And we have the Khoza department. Let's do that properly. And we've got CCFA in Cape Town. Let them run with a bigger audience. But if we can, let's support one another. Why? Because we are called not to build our own kingdom here on earth. We are called to build His kingdom. And we are merely hirelings, let's be honest. That's our job, to do better than 3%. All right, before I get carried away, let's move on to the next slide. So let's look at the audience in South Africa. This is South Africa. And why this is important, because there's a perception that it's only old people that listens to radio. Have you heard that before? That is wrong. So this is what the radio landscape looks like. So, and they only track from 18 and older. This is brand map, and again, we pay a lot for this data. Data is expensive. But they track from 18 years and older. And look at this, 35 is the age where people are consuming radio. Not media, radio. But look at this Gen Z, 25 years. That's a big chunk of what the radio listenership landscape in South Africa looks like. And again, if you listen to a lot of the programming, it's definitely not appealing to a 25-year-old or even a 35-year-old. So again, we have to think differently when we plan our media. So let's look at this, the Christians. So that 3% Christians that actually wants to consume media. What is the breakdown of that? That was even more surprising to me. Look at that. It's 25 to 34-year-olds that's listening to us.
Sure.
That's an eye-opener. It was an eye-opener to me. So again, the biggest audience is between 25 and 44 years old. That's where it sits. So if we can just walk away from today realizing that we've got young, dynamic, vibrant, young people who are sick and tired of social media, that's a new thing. People are getting tired of consuming the same nonsense on a daily basis. They want substance. Young people are craving for substance, but in a different way. And maybe, I don't know if there's a slide about it, but do radio different. It's short, it's dynamic, it's vibrant, it's energetic, it's humorous. Christians can laugh. Have fun. And if you want to do a long thing, that's why we have podcasts. And direct the traffic to the podcasts. But stay dynamic on radio. That's how you build an audience. If we go further, what is the most trusted media for Christians in South Africa? The least trusted, and I don't know if you know this new Threads thing, that's the least trusted medium. People don't trust that. Magazines, podcasts, TikTok, they don't trust that. But the medium that they trust the most is 46.4, 46.7 radio and TV. Because they know to produce a TV program is expensive. And they know radio, they know their DJ. They know they can resonate with him. They know that this guy who aims at that specific audience or this woman, she knows life. What is the one beauty of radio compared to, for instance, digital media, social media? What is the one similarity? It's personal, it's one-on-one, but both is in real time.
Yes.
Real time. No other medium can do real-time stuff. We can do that. So can you imagine if we do real-time radio combined with real-time social media? And don't think for 1 second, it is just to record whatever we're doing in studio and putting that on social, now all of a sudden everybody's going to go wild about it. No, we have to be more clever. We have to be very creative when we say we're going to have an integrated strategy. Otherwise, again, they will tune out and they will listen to whatever commercial station is in front of them. The one thing that always saddens me is that I know that we've got the best stories to tell. The best stories to tell. If you just go through the Bible, goodness guys, it's amazing. The amount of stories, if you go to the Old Testament, Jesus told stories. The power of a story is amazing. But if you do that correctly, in a way that you know will resonate with the modern audience, it will be gripping. We all know the term carpool radio. That's where people go to work and they don't want to get out. They want to finish listening to that specific story. Does it mean that story is now 12 minutes long? Absolutely not. That's why it's so important to do proper planning. It's easy to talk about anything for 12 minutes. It's difficult to talk about a proper story for 3 minutes or for 2 minutes. That takes proper planning. To have the punchline at the right time. That is so important. That is what makes people tune in. That is what will excite people to hear more. So if you have that 3-minute story or that 2-minute story, not a sermon, a story, and you put the rest of the story on podcast, that's how you build audiences in a modern society. Because that is how they consume content. Alright, so radio is one of the most trusted mediums. And in a world where we all know people are desperate for truth, I think you all know what was the one word that was Googled the most last year. Anybody who knows that? That was quite astounding. Google had a report end of last year. No.
Fake news.
No. It's one word.
Oh,
You're close.
okay.
But it was one word. Authenticity.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe that? The word that was Googled the most, authenticity. We are living in a fake world, not just fake news. We're living in a fake world. If you go to Instagram posts, it's actually laughable. Everybody tries to portray this perfect world, while we all know their lives are crumbling. Everybody is living this fake facade. And yet, on the inside, they're desperate for truth, for realness, for authenticity. And that's what radio brings. Radio is real. It's real time. It's now. And can you imagine as you, as a presenter, can share from personal pain? Not just telling people. But if you can share, get vulnerable, be authentic, that's not just only how you build an audience, but that's how you change lives. And we are in the business of changing lives. That's what we do. All right, let's move on. All right, let's talk about the future. So, we all know that AI is the reality of the future. And we don't have time to talk about AI today. I attended a couple of seminars on it, and for me it's scary, to be quite honest. AI, if we really get into what that really means, it is scary. But if we don't embrace that and learn that and make it part of our daily routine and programming, we're going to lose more than 40 million people in this country, because that will become part of their lives. I had a conversation with somebody 2 weeks ago. He's a youth pastor, and it's a long story, but he's busy building a platform with AI. And as you can imagine, if you take ChatGPT, we all use ChatGPT by now, and you get that thing to read the Bible and read all the historic documents around the Bible. Trust me, AI will know more about the Bible than anybody on earth. So if we don't have filters in place that can help to bring context, then we're in trouble. So I had the privilege to talk to Paul. So what this guy did is he had a bot, avatar, it's Paul. And this AI avatar read everything in the Bible that Paul wrote. Is this AI bot you're talking to?
Whoa.
Isn't that amazing? To have a conversation with Paul. That's the future of media. So the first question we asked and said, Paul, but if we read your scripture, you come across as a real chauvinist. So what do you think Paul said back? That was quite interesting. But that's where media is moving. So Paul put us in place by saying, listen, that's your own reference. Maybe you're a chauvinist, because that's the perspective that you are talking from. But this is why we said follow. And then he explains why he said certain things in Romans or Corinthians or whatever the case might be. That's the future of media. So again, if we sit here and we think we're okay to do radio the way we did it the past 30 years, we are losing the battle. And also we're forsaking our calling. And let me tell you, I know it's difficult to hear all these things because it sounds like hard work. Again, Paul walked Europe, bare feet sometimes, to spread the gospel. The least we can do is to make sure that we are skilled in the place where God has put us, to resonate and engage with a modern audience. All right, so again, what the future looks like, and we already touched on this, AI is the future. I spoke about the evolving radio landscape. So we have to adapt to the digital age. We have to have hybrid models. And like I said, if we have to help organize a proper content workshop, we've got people who can assist in that. To really understand what an integrated strategy looks like. Don't think for 1 second that an integrated strategy is merely what you do on air, you repeat that online. It's definitely not that. It has to have a life of its own in different ways, but yet it needs to be connected. And if you can connect that, that's where the magic lies. Why? Because people are intrigued by it. They will engage with it. And it will be something that will draw our audience back. Podcasting, I already just referred to that. That's the one way. Because let's be honest, we like to do sermons on air. It's easy. But that's why we have podcasts. We have to be clever and how we position the messaging. Because I'm the first person that will tell you that it is impossible to teach somebody a deep theological issue in 5 minutes. It's impossible. Don't think for 1 second that we're going to save everything in the world with 3-minute bursts of content. No, we're going to ignite enthusiasm about certain topics, and then we're going to draw our audience to a place where they can engage on their own time, where they're running next to the ocean, or whatever they do. They can engage with gripping content that is a teaching, again, that will shape them and mold them to what God wants us to be. So we have to be clever about these things. That's why we have podcasts. And then obviously infrastructure, I think we have maybe touched on this earlier this week. But these are the 3 things: the radio landscape, that has evolved tremendously. The rise of podcasting, and it's massive. Technological advances, and we can talk about that as well. Joe Rogan, you all heard of it. He's got a podcast. 290 million people. One guy. That's the power of podcasting. So talk about a global strategy, it's actually easy in the modern day society. It's, again, position yourself with gripping content. And if you read up about the Joe Rogan phenomenon, it's simply, here's a guy who's authentic. And he's the first guy to admit that I'm not always right. I don't know what I'm talking about sometimes, but I will be thought-provoking, and I will be authentic, and I will be real. And once you do that, you will captivate an audience. And isn't that exactly what Jesus did? He was authentic. So much so to the cross, to this death. He was authentic, he was real. And that's why people followed him. So again, we have to be clever when it comes to these things. And just to understand the digital audio usage, obviously 91% is on our smartphones. So again, when we design stuff, app or whatever the case might be, or even a website, if you have a website, if it's not adaptable to a smartphone, then you might as well don't have one. Make sure that everything you do online can live on a smartphone. Even tablets are vanishing. That was a craze at a time. Your smartphone is everything. Let's be honest. I had an exercise with a couple of high execs a few months ago. And the rule was, there was a box at the door. Everybody had to put their phone in there. And there are certain people who they just simply don't want to let go of their smartphone. It's as if this thing is an extension of themselves. And yeah, I don't think we have to talk about that, but the point is, smartphones is part of everybody's lives. Laptops and smart TVs. Those are the top three platforms that are used when it comes to digital. So the future is terrestrial radio plus. So I'm not going to dwell on that again. I think we've touched on that. The digital integrations, local focus. Maybe I can just say a few things on this. The one thing that the commercial stations can't do is be local. They try to be local, but it's difficult because they've got a very, very wide audience. And that's our strong point. That's our strength. Community radio is localized. So what we have to do is get your ears on the ground. Make sure that your content is relevant to your area. Because whether we like it or not, most of the people don't care about Russia invading Ukraine. So we can talk about that for hours. But in the Western Cape at the moment, we're busy with the initiative there. There was a news article on page 9. 120 people got shot and killed in 6 days by gangsters. And it's not in the main news. Nowhere. So if we don't talk about it, if we don't highlight that as local radio stations, then the gangsters and the gang leaders will keep on rooting. This is a very serious example. But on national news, you won't find that. So get not just news, everything, data that will resonate with your local audience. So this, again, is how you do radio. So what is the plus? Because if you want to talk to a global audience, then you focus on a topic. So the topic then isn't gang violence. The topic then is the fatherless generation. That is what happens if you have a community where there are no fathers that really take their role seriously. And isn't that a global issue? Not just a Cape Town issue, it's a global issue. And then it starts to become gripping content that everybody can resonate with. That's where Focus on the Family does an amazing job to create content, short snippets, long content. But again, we all have to reevaluate the content constantly? Is it really resonating with a modern audience? The voices, is it young? Is it dynamic? Can you address it that 25-year-old? That's the thing. So, and then obviously high definition radio, we all know that, and the streaming services. So I'm at the end, and then we've got 10 minutes, then maybe we can take a few questions. But radio, again, is the driving force when it comes to media in general. I can tell you how many stories of how we complemented television and television campaigns with radio. How we've complemented and boosted digital campaigns with radio. Here's a good stat for you. If you're a client and you advertise on digital space, because everybody's on digital now, and they think it's new. It's not new, it's been around for 10 years, and there's so much clutter in digital that you struggle to get through that. By the way, you get almost 10,000 marketing messages every single day. So talk about clutter. If you want to get your message across, you have to engage with people 7 times. Otherwise, you will get lost in that 10,000 messages. That is now from picking up your phone in the morning, push notifications, right through the billboards, etc., etc., etc. Radio, television, almost 10,000. So the number is, if you don't engage 7 times with a listener or a person with a specific message, they won't hear it. They hear it, but they won't hear it. They will listen, but they won't hear it. So again, we have to be clever. So the point is, radio. Once we've started to do a radio combined with digital campaigns, we boosted the effectiveness of that to 53%. We could track it. And that's a general phenomenon. But that's what I'm saying. Radio still is the driving force for media. And never forget it. So it doesn't matter if you're television or digital media, you need radio. You need clever radio to boost the message. And again, so let's say radio is the most trusted medium. The attention span on radio is more than 5 hours per day. Can you imagine that? You've got the opportunity to engage with an audience 5 hours per day. They respond to creativity. There has to be synergy between all these platforms, otherwise you'll become obsolete. Emotion. I think we touched on that. We are emotional beings. If we can't get people to emotionally, whether it's crying or laughing or worrying with the content that we give them, there has to be an emotional connection. If we don't have that, we are dead. The connection is important. Sonic triggers, we haven't had time to talk about that, but create something on radio that will trigger something. That's also, again, part of the creatives that we need to do to be more effective. So the reality is, let's go back to Romans. How will they know? And whether we like it or not, we live in a world where there is a lot of competition. Christians, listen to commercial radio. And let me tell you this. Anybody, forget about just Christians. Every human being on the planet, there will come a time where there is trouble in the house, where there's a stressful situation, where there's a big decision that you need to take. Then you need substance. Then you need guidance. Then you need certainty. You need a clear voice that resonates. So let's take this seriously. Let's go rethink the way we do media. We have to change people. We can't do it the same way. And let me tell you, the results will be magical. If we can engage in a different way, Because radio, again, in a certain sense, it's so simple. Do the right things right and people will respond. And that's my prayer to all of us, that we take this seriously. This is our calling. This is what we were called to do. So let's do it properly. So thank you from my side. We've got 3 minutes if there's a question.